Breaking! The silence that fell over the House of Commons at 12:03 p.m. today was not just a pause in debate. It was the sound of a government collapsing in real time. Keir Starmer, a man who built his entire career on forensic precision and legal mastery, didn't just hesitate, he froze. A complete, terrifying 6-second cognitive shutdown that was broadcast live to millions of voters, signaling the end of his political authority. If you want to understand how a single leaked document just destroyed the Labour government's legitimacy, hit that subscribe button right now, because the footage we are about to analyze is the most damaging political moment in British history since the fall of Thatcher. Here is exactly how the catastrophe unfolded, second by agonizing second.
The session began normally, but the atmosphere in the chamber changed the moment Nigel Farage stood up. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't performing for the cameras, he was holding a single red-bound dossier with a calmness that terrified the Labour front bench. Farage waited for the jeering to die down, his eyes fixed on the Prime Minister. Then he dropped the nuclear option. You stood at this dispatch box and told the British people the Brussels Alignment Pact was a right-wing conspiracy theory, Farage said, his voice cutting through the air like a razor. You called it misinformation. You called it a lie. He paused, opening the dossier to page 14, holding it up so the cameras could zoom in on the wet ink signature at the bottom. So, Prime Minister, can you explain why your personal signature is on this document dated 3 days before the election, committing the United Kingdom to indefinite judicial oversight by foreign courts?
That was the moment. Starmer reached for his water glass, but his hand stopped halfway. He looked down at his notes, searching for a rebuttal that wasn't there. He looked up at the speaker. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. For 6 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom stared into the abyss. The color drained from his face. Behind him, Angela Rayner stared straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact, her knuckles white as she gripped the leather bench. The Home Secretary began furiously typing on a phone concealed under her order paper. They knew. In that silence, the entire country realized that the conspiracy was real. Starmer had signed the deal. He had surrendered sovereignty in secret, and he had been caught red-handed. When he finally spoke, it was a stammered, incoherent mess about drafting errors and preliminary frameworks, but nobody was listening anymore. The damage was done. The lie was exposed, and the government's moral foundation had just evaporated.
But if you think the drama ended in the Commons, you are wrong. That was just the detonator. The explosion is happening right now across the entire British economy. Because what Farage revealed in that dossier isn't just a political betrayal. It is an economic death sentence for working people. Clause 17 of the leaked pact reveals a hidden agreement to retroactively apply carbon correction tariffs to small British businesses, a tax that was never debated, never voted on, and never disclosed. Within minutes of the broadcast, the reality of this betrayal began to hit home. Take the case of Graham Miller, a 54-year-old independent haulier from Grimsby who has spent 30 years building his logistics business from a single van to a fleet of 12 trucks. He watched the Prime Minister freeze from his depot office. Under the terms of the document Farage just exposed, Miller's business now faces an immediate, retrospective tax bill of £42,000. That is not a profit margin adjustment. That is bankruptcy.
Miller filmed a video on his phone 20 minutes after Prime Minister's questions ended. He is standing in front of his trucks, a man who has played by the rules his entire life, fighting back tears of rage. "I voted for them," he says, his voice shaking. "I believed them when they said they were on the side of the builders and the makers. And all this time, they had signed a piece of paper that wipes me out." That video has already been viewed 2.4 million times. The comments section is not just angry, it is a digital riot. People are connecting the dots between their soaring bills, their closing high streets, and the secret deals made by men in expensive suits who think they are untouchable.
This isn't just policy failure. This is theft. The document reveals that while small businesses are being liquidated to pay for these hidden tariffs, the government allocated £600 million for compliance consultants, money that flows directly from the taxes of hauliers like Graham Miller, into the pockets of the very administrative elite who drafted the secret pact. The contrast is so nauseating, so morally indefensible, that it has triggered a wave of fury that no spin doctor can manage. And here is where the crisis spirals out of control. The markets heard the silence too. By 12:45 p.m., the pound sterling began a nosedive that reminded veteran traders of the darkest days of the 2008 crash. The City of London realized instantly that Starmer is a dead man walking. You cannot have a prime minister who is proven to have lied to Parliament about a foundational treaty. The risk premium on UK government bonds spiked immediately as international capital started fleeing the country. Why? Because if the prime minister lied about this, what else is he lying about? The trust is gone. Goldman Sachs issued an emergency note to clients at 1:15 p.m. with a brutally simple subject line: UK political risk, critical. They are downgrading British assets because they know that a government with legitimacy cannot function. Pension funds are taking a hit. Mortgage lenders are pulling products. The chaos in Westminster is already costing you money in your pocket, right now. Then came the development that turned this from a political scandal into a full-blown constitutional crisis. At 3:45 p.m., a convoy of unmarked police motorcycles and a black Range Rover with the Royal Standard was spotted sweeping out of Buckingham Palace and heading toward Whitehall. This was not a scheduled movement. This was an intervention. Sources inside the palace, usually the most discreet people on earth, are leaking with a ferocity that suggests the king is absolutely apoplectic. King Charles views the royal assent, the process by which bills become law, as a sacred trust between the crown and the people. If the government has been signing international treaties that bypass Parliament and then lying about it, they have not just deceived the voters, they have deceived the monarch.
A senior courtier, speaking on condition of absolute anonymity, described the mood in the palace as cold fury. The king reportedly watched the prime minister's silence in the Commons and immediately summoned his private secretaries. The phrase being used in royal circles is constitutional subterfuge. The king is the ultimate guarantor of the nation's stability, and he cannot stand by while a prime minister erodes the very mechanism of democracy. The meeting that took place this afternoon between the king's representatives and senior cabinet officials was described as brutal. There were no pleasantries. The palace demanded the immediate release of the unredacted Brussels Alignment Pact and a full timeline of when the prime minister knew about the signatures. This is the monarchy flexing muscles we haven't seen used in a century. It signals to the military, the judiciary, and the civil service that the man in number 10 is on thin ice. When the king moves, the establishment listens. Starmer isn't just fighting Nigel Farage anymore. He is fighting the entire constitutional weight of the British state. Inside Downing Street, the atmosphere has descended into something resembling a frantic bunker in the final days of a collapsing regime. The silence from the Prime Minister's press office is deafening. Usually, within an hour of a crisis, there is a statement, a denial, a counterattack. Today, nothing. Just the hum of shredders and the sound of careers ending. WhatsApp groups of Labour MPs are leaking like a sieve, and the content is explosive. These are not the messages of a united party. They are the messages of rats fleeing a sinking ship. One backbencher who won his seat by fewer than 500 votes sent a message to the 2024 intake group that simply read, "He froze. We are finished. Who do we back to save our seats?"
That is the sound of a leadership challenge beginning. The sharks are circling. Wes Streeting and Rachel Reeves have reportedly canceled their evening media rounds. Why? Because they don't want to be on camera defending a prime minister who might not be in charge by Monday. They are distancing themselves, preparing their own leadership bids, ready to step over Starmer's political corpse to seize the crown. but they are deluding themselves if they think a change of face will save them. The public isn't just angry at Starmer, they are angry at the entire machine that allowed this to happen. Every cabinet minister who sat on that front bench and stayed silent while Farage read the evidence is complicit. They all knew, they all lied, and the voters are coming for them all. The scale of the public backlash is unprecedented. By 5 p.m., spontaneous protests began forming outside Parliament. These aren't organized by unions or political parties. These are normal people. Nurses, teachers, construction workers, pensioners, people who have never protested a day in their lives are gathering at the gates of Westminster because they feel a visceral sense of betrayal. The chants are deafening. Get them out, and traitors. Police are struggling to contain the crowds, not because they are violent, but because the sheer numbers are overwhelming. This is what happens when the consent of the governed snaps. The social contract has been breached. People are looking at their heating bills, looking at the secret tax hikes in the Brussels Pact, and realizing that their poverty is a policy choice made by liars.
Let's go back to the document itself, because the media is trying to bury the worst details. Page 22 of the dossier, Farage exposed, contains a clause regarding digital identity alignment. It commits the UK to adopting a European-style digital identity framework by 2026 as a condition for trade access. Starmer explicitly promised during the election campaign that there were no plans for mandatory digital ID. Yet his signature is right there, next to the date, authorizing the funding for the database. He looked the British people in the eye and lied about the fundamental privacy rights of every citizen. This isn't just about economics, it's about control. It's about a government that views the population as subjects to be managed, not citizens to be represented. The betrayal is total. And where is the mainstream media in all of this? The BBC led their 6 p.m. news not with the Prime Minister's freeze or the secret treaty, but with a report on climate resilience in the home counties. They are protecting him. They are terrified of acknowledging that Nigel Farage, the man they spent years mocking and marginalizing, has just done more actual journalism in 10 minutes than they have done in 10 years. They are complicit in the cover-up. They knew the rumors about the Brussels Pact were circulating, but they refused to investigate. They called it populism. Well, now the truth is out, and their credibility is burning alongside the government's. The reason you are watching this video is that you know the legacy media will not tell you the truth. They will spin the freeze as tiredness. They will spin the treaty as necessary diplomacy. They are gaslighting the nation, but it isn't working anymore. The timeline for what happens next is accelerating. Constitutional experts are already debating the mechanics of a no-confidence vote. If 54 Labour MPs submit letters to the 1922 committee equivalent within their party, a leadership contest is triggered. Sources say the number of letters already written exceeds 70. The party grandees are terrified that if they don't remove Starmer immediately, the party will face an extinction-level event at the next election. But removing him solves nothing if the secret treaty remains in place. Nigel Farage knows this. He has already announced a press conference for tomorrow morning where he has promised to release Part 2 of the dossier. Part 2. The blood drained from the faces of Labour strategists when they heard that. If Part 1 caused the Prime Minister to freeze, what on earth is in Part 2? Rumors are swirling that the second half of the document contains communications between the Treasury and the European Commission discussing the dismantling of British fishing rights in exchange for financial services access. If that is true, the coastal communities that lent Labour their votes will never forgive them. We are looking at a total realignment of British politics. The Red Wall isn't just crumbling, it is being vaporized. Reform UK is surging in the polls, with internal tracking showing them jumping 6 points in the last 4 hours alone. This is not a drift, it is a landslide. The vacuum of leadership in Downing Street is being filled by the only man who seems to be telling the truth, and the establishment is absolutely terrified of what that means.
Think about the position of the king again. He is in an impossible bind. If he does nothing, he looks weak, while the government sells off the nation's sovereignty. If he intervenes publicly, he risks a constitutional crisis. But the private signals are clear. The palace wants this cleaned up, and they want it cleaned up now. There are reports that the king's private secretary has requested a face-to-face meeting with the cabinet secretary, the head of the civil service, to discuss continuity of governance. That is code for, is the prime minister mentally and politically capable of remaining in office? When those questions are being asked by the monarch, the end is near. The tragedy of this moment is the human cost. While politicians scramble to save their careers, the markets are pricing in the chaos. Mortgage rates are ticking up on the futures market. The cost of government borrowing is rising, which means less money for schools, less money for hospitals, and higher taxes for you. The incompetence of Keir Starmer is not abstract. It is a bill that will land on your doormat. Every second he clings to power, the country gets poorer. The Brussels Alignment Pact is estimated to cost the UK economy £12 billion a year in lost productivity and compliance costs. That is £12 billion that could have gone to the NHS, £12 billion that could have lowered your energy bills. Instead, it is being sent across the channel to pay for a bureaucracy we voted to leave.
The anger you are feeling is justified. It is righteous. You were promised change. You were promised integrity. You were promised a government of service. Instead, you got a government of secrecy, surrender, and silence. The image of Starmer freezing in the Commons will be the defining image of this decade. It was the moment the mask slipped. It was the moment the slick PR, the carefully rehearsed lines, and the media protection racket all failed at once. All that was left was a man who knew he was guilty, standing in front of a nation that finally saw him for what he is. As we head into the night, the lights in Whitehall are blazing. Lawyers are billing thousands of pounds an hour to try and find a loophole in the treaty Farage exposed. Spin doctors are frantically calling journalists, begging for favorable coverage. But the mood on the streets is shifting. There is a sense of finality in the air. This isn't just a bad news cycle. This is the end of the road. The question is no longer, will Starmer survive? The question is, can the Labour Party survive him? And beyond that, can the system itself survive a betrayal this profound?
We are entering uncharted waters. The next 48 hours will decide the future of the United Kingdom. Will the king force a resignation? Will the cabinet launch a coup? Will Nigel Farage drop the second bombshell that finishes them off for good? You need to be ready, because the speed of these events is dizzying. The old rules no longer apply. The establishment has lost control, and they know it. They are frightened of you. They are frightened of the truth, and they should be. This story is developing by the minute. We are expecting the release of the Part 2 documents at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We will be live to analyze every single line, every hidden clause, and every betrayal. Do not trust the mainstream news to give you the full picture. They are part of the problem. We are the only ones who will show you the raw documents and tell you exactly what they mean for your family and your future. The government is hoping you will lose interest. They are hoping you will look away. Do not give them that satisfaction.
So here is what I need you to do. Hit the like button to force this video into the algorithm so the truth can bypass the censors. Share this with everyone you know, your family, your work colleagues, your WhatsApp groups. They need to see the freeze. They need to see the documents. They need to understand that the country is being sold out from under their feet. And tell me in the comments, do you think King Charles should dissolve Parliament and trigger an immediate general election? Or do you think Starmer should face a criminal investigation for misleading the House? I read every single comment, and your voice matters now more than ever. The establishment is watching the reaction to this video. Let them see your anger. Let them hear your demand for justice. This is not just politics. This is the fight for the soul of Britain. The Prime Minister froze, but we will not. We are watching. We are waiting. And we will not stop until the whole truth is out. Stay tuned. The real storm is just beginning.